Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Rei-Lin bringing you some more Armored Warfare today. The new Collector's Edition tanks are now available for purchase, and I'm going to talk about one of them today. This is the Tier 7 M60-2000, and it's a bit of a beast of a tank, I must say so. It is a Patton hull, so if you are a fan of the Pattons, the M60s, the M60A3, the hull has made kind of a comeback, but then it's got this really big M1A1 Abrams turret on it. So it's a bit of a Frankenstein's monster here, but it turns out that it ends up being a fairly decent main battle tank for Tier 7. I'm going to talk about the stats here and jump right into it. If you're not interested in listening to the stats as I go over them, you can click at the top of your screen and jump right into the replay. You can get a feel for how this thing sort of plays. And for the rest of us, we're going to jump right in and start talking about this tank. Now, I will say right off the bat that this is part of the Collector's Edition tank set. You do get 2 tanks. You end up getting 90 days of premium and 15 million credits on top of getting this tank, plus the Challenger 1 Falcon, which I'll review in another video coming up soon. And so, again, it's a package deal. But is the package deal very good? Well, at first, a lot of people obviously bought this within minutes or hours of the whole thing going up on the website, myself included. And since then, they actually came out and said, hey, we don't think the deal was as good as some of our previous deals. So they threw some more premium time and some more credits into the pot to sweeten the deal a little bit. Just quickly, if you were to buy all of these things that you get, so if you were to pay the 5,500 gold for the M60, the 9,000 gold for the Challenger Falcon, buy 90 days of premium, buy or convert 15 million credits over from using gold, you would spend a grand total of $147 to get everything, since everything that you get in the package you can only buy with gold. So, to buy all that much gold and get all the tanks and everything separately would cost you $147. The Collector Edition costs you $99. So, for $100, you're saving $47 to get everything at once. But you do end up with a couple of very good tanks and some credits and some premium time. Now, obviously, some people probably won't need the credits and don't care about the premium time. You just want the tanks. But unfortunately, this is a Collector Edition, and that's how you have to go about getting them. However, you're not going to be that disappointed. Both tanks are pretty good. We're going to talk about the M60-2000 right now, and I'm going to be comparing it because it is a bit of a Frankenstein tank, combining one hull of one tank with the turret of another tank. It makes it hard to do a direct comparison with any tank in the game, but the closest that you can get is the M1A1 Abrams, the Tier 8 tank. All in all, just looking at the basic stats here, you can see that the Tier 7 actually is pretty much on par with the stock M1A1 Abrams at Tier 8. So I would basically call the M60-2000 a Tier 7.5, maybe? But let's jump right in. So the damage and the penetration, 503 and 470. Now keep in mind my stats, as always, are reflected based on my crew and my loadout. But if we look down here, the armor piercing is 468 damage and 470 millimeters of penetration, which is 100% identical to the M1A1 Abrams stock gun and ammunition. So identical pretty much right to a T. If the M1A1, if I had this tank with this same loadout, the same damage would be popping up. For the heat, what we got here is 585 damage with 413 millimeters of penetration. The Abrams doesn't seem to get heat right off the bat, so looking at the values with the upgraded heat is much higher than the M60's 585 and 413 penetration. The Abrams gets much more damage and much more penetration. I'm not going to go over the exact values. Just know that the M1A1 Abrams is definitely going to beat out the M60 on damage and penetration as you go through the upgrade tree. Moving down to damage per minute, 4,276. Most Tier 7 main battle tanks are around 4,000 or just slightly above. With my crew and retrofits and consumables, this isn't terrible, but it's pretty much just average, with a reload time of 7.06 seconds. The Abrams, obviously, the damage per minute is much lower because it doesn't have any of the boosts. And the reload time is pretty long at 8.57 seconds. This is close to Russian amounts of reload time. But again, this is stock. It does get better. But when we look at the defense, so the armor and the health, 2,504 health is pretty hefty for a tier 7. You're right up there along with Challenger 1 amounts of health. And it does get an armor slot to boost that just a little bit more, which is why it is 2,500. But it is lower than the stock M1A1, which has 2,570, just stock with no retrofits to boost it. So overall, the health is going to be higher on the M1A1 or Abrams, but not by a whole lot. But here's where it's kind of neat. The hull is 320 in the front, 100 on the side, and 47 at the rear for the M60. And it's 320 in the front, 140 on the side, and 105 at the rear for the Abrams. As you can see, they both have pretty much the exact same hull frontal armor. However, don't let these numbers fool you. While that is pretty damn good for a tier 7 in the hull, you can see that it is steel versus composite on the Abrams. This means that the modifiers for the M60 are all exactly what you see. They don't get a boost to anything at all, whereas the composite gets modifiers. And so these numbers on the Abrams are going to be a lot higher in practice because of the modifiers. Now the turret fares off even better. It is basically an M1A1 Abrams turret at 410 on the front, 320 on the sides, and 100 at the rear. It is also composite, so it gets a nice turret modifier boost, and it's pretty much identical to the turret on the M1A1. 410, 320, 100 composite, same modifiers. So turret is just like you just popped this off and stuck it right on a patent hull. It is identical, so it's going to share all the strengths and weaknesses of the M1A1. So it's got a tier 8 turret on it, which is good. Now, you talk about mobility. This tank isn't that slow, 61.2 kilometers an hour, but even stock, the Abrams still goes faster at 72 kilometers an hour. However, my hunch tells me that these tanks are still slow because they are main battle tanks, and getting to 72 kilometers an hour in most main battle tanks is not necessarily practical unless you're going downhill. So overall, these tanks aren't that slow, but they're not that quick either. But the M60 here does get 0 to 32 kilometers an hour in 5.83 seconds versus the sluggish 7.3 seconds of the Abrams. But again, the Abrams is also stock. The hull traverse is quick at 29.9 degrees a second. Not too, I mean, it's basically average. It's not too quick. It's not too slow. It's just pretty much right in the middle. And of course, the Abrams is much slower at 25.3 degrees per second. Camouflage on these tanks does not matter. They're main battle tanks, not tank destroyers. But the view range is 415 meters on the M60, 375 on the Abrams. Again, these values are still boosted slightly because of my retrofits, my consumables, and my crew. But even stock, the Abrams is a little bit weak on the view range. Now, the gun performance between the two is almost the same. 10 degrees of gun depression in the front, which is great. 0 over the rear, which kind of sucks. The accuracy is 0.10. Not too bad, not too great. I'd like to see it under that in the 0.08, 0.07 range. Those types of values end up giving you much better accuracy. And the stock Abrams has 0.11. So very close on the accuracy, exactly the same cannon depression. The aim time is 2.27 seconds on the M60, modified by my crew, and 2.9 on the stock Abrams. So both of these generally have long aim times, and that's why I focused on getting these aim times down. Sitting around for over 3 seconds trying to aim makes it really difficult to hit fast moving targets going across in front of you. The turret traverse, 35.03 degrees per second, is not bad. It actually does spin fairly quickly, especially considering the size of that turret. And the stock Abrams has 30.1 degrees. Now these values are going to go up, of course, based on your crew and your retrofits. So overall, you can see that even the stock Abrams is still more than a match for the M60 in a lot of ways. The damage is mostly the same. The reload times will be mostly the same. The health is mostly the same. The armor is better on the Abrams hull, identical on the turret. They're both fairly quick, okay acceleration. They both have decent handling guns. So what ultimately this means is that you have to play the M60-2000 hull down. Don't let this 320 millimeters fool you. In the front, this thing is nowhere close to as hardy as the Abrams. You can see it's got a giant lower front plate, and even the upper front plate isn't that well angled. Basically, you can take shots right in here. The turret ring is still kind of there. It's still sort of easy to take shots at this thing and do a lot of damage. I have been repeatedly penetrated by same tier tanks if I don't hide my hull. If you want to fight using this tank, you're going to have to get your hull covered all the way across the top if you can. Pulling up against dead tanks, rocks, the edge of rocks, using your gun depression to go over a hill and shoot down, you're going to have to play this exactly as American tanks from World of Tanks need to be played. Is completely hull down, using that gun depression to your advantage, using this frontal turret and every bit of armor on it to just basically bully everyone against you into submission. Think of it a lot like the T-29 from World of Tanks. It's a very good tier 7. This is also a very good tier 7, but it needs to be hull down. If you're not hull down, believe me, you're going to get penetrated left and right, even by the bots in PvE. So overall, what it basically comes down to is, think of it like a almost tier 8 tank that you get at tier 7. And overall, it's good. I think it's a very good tank. I actually like it a little bit better than the Abrams style of tank because, well, it's just not as big. Yeah, it has this giant turret, but the turret is almost as big as the hull, and it's just less of a target. It does sit kind of tall, which isn't that big of a deal to me. And the gun depression makes this thing a very good ridgeline fighter and just generally doing exactly what it needs to do. This is not a frontline tank, however. It does have armor on the turret, but a lot of places you're going to be very vulnerable unless you find a spot to go hull down in. If you're not going hull down, you're going to get destroyed very quickly from anything and everything that shoots at you, except for pretty much the auto cannons. So make sure that you're more of the support if you're playing this tank. You don't want to be front and center and drawing all of the fire towards you unless you've got a very good hold down position and just letting the bots ping off of your frontal turret. Do I think it's worth it? Since it's part of the package deal and you do save some money if you buy the new collector's edition, and because that collector edition also comes with the Challenger 1 Falcon, which is an extremely good tier 8 premium tank, I have to say, yeah, I don't mind the M60. I like the way that the M60A3s kind of looked, and this is kind of, like I said, a Frankenstein's monster version of the M60 and the M1A1 Abrams. I think this tank, being that kind of hybrid between the two, actually tends to work a little bit well. I mean, it's a hull down tank, whereas a lot of the Abrams were pretty much just put your front towards the enemy and go. Pretty much like every other main battle tank, except for probably the Leopard. The Leopard line tends to be that kind of hull down, protect the lower front plate style of game. It's a lot easier in a lot of places to go hull down in these tanks in Armor Warfare, just because there's so much variation to the landscapes and places you can go and items that you can use to protect your hull, like wrecked tanks or barriers or something like that. So if you can get this thing hull down, it's a very good tank. The reload speed is a little slow, but it is a main battle tank, and you can pretty much make mincemeat of whatever gets in front of you. The only real downside to the gun is that the penetration seems a little bit low to me, especially when you compare it to the M1A1, just because the M1A1 is obviously tier 8, so it gets significantly more penetration than the M60 does. But overall, I think it's a good tank, and since, like I said, it comes with the Challenger 1 Falcon, the whole deal is not that bad. If you bought the last collector edition, and it was basically the same price as this one, the old one came with more tanks, but a lot of the tanks that it came with were just kind of the lower tier, like the Abbott and the Object 430. So those tanks were fun, don't get me wrong. They're good premiums for low tiers for sure. But this one is just cut out all of that fluff. It gives you some credits, it gives you some premium time, and two fairly decent tanks. But considering the M60 itself, it's not a bad tank. I mean, I think it's a lot better than the XM1 FSED tank. For sure, it looks cooler to me. It has this playstyle that I just think fits the tank. It is not itself a frontline tank. You have to play it more as a support tank. Let the heavier, beefier tier 8s get out in front of you, and then you take a flanking position or come up over a hill, go haul down, and just light stuff up. You can do pretty good in this tank as long as you remember to stay hauled down. So, let's talk about the Commander. It is a premium tank. I go with Maximilian. If you don't have Maximilian, that will be up to your personal preference on which commander you go with. I don't think at this point still that any of the commanders really suit a heavy main battle tank style. For the crew, well, this thing accelerates sluggishly, so off-road driving, I take it on all of my tanks. There's no reason not to increase your acceleration pretty much all the time in every tank. Aim speed, this one still has M1A1 Abrams stock turret, so you're closing in on 2.9 seconds worth of aim time as a base. Getting the aim speed improved is essential in this tank. You don't want to spend a whole lot of time aiming. You want to spend most of your time firing. And speaking of firing, rapid fire, rate of fire increased by 2.5%. Definitely want to take that. Any way that you can increase how fast that you can shoot is definitely a good thing. If I wanted to take this secondary skills, I'm probably going to go with spin to win to get the hull traverse speed improved. Since this thing has no gun depression whatsoever over the rear of the tank, if you have to do a 180 turn, you might as well make it better. It also makes it a little bit more maneuverable in tight spaces. For the second on the gunner, probably going to maybe do marksman, maybe do the twist, most likely do the twist. The turret traverse is pretty quick, but at the same time it's just average, so if you can increase the turret traverse speed by 10%, I would probably go with do the twist. Marksman might be something to get the peak accuracy just a little bit tighter than, so that's personal preference. Down here you're really not going to have much of a choice on the gunner except for preparation. It does get 2 types of ammunition, so sometimes you're going to want to swap to the heat, and this just speeds that up by 20%. Ammunition. For once, you don't get any high explosive on this tank. You can hold 48 rounds, and how you split it up between your armor piercing and your heat is up to you. The heat hits much harder, over 100 damage per shot harder than the armor piercing, but 413 millimeters of penetration is a little bit low for heat, and you're going to have a lot of tanks at tier 7 and up that have ERA, making them basically immune to the heat, Terminators and whatnot. So play that by ear. How much you want to take is up to you. They're both useful in different situations. Consumables, I always take the most expensive spare parts, energy drink, and medical kit. You can swap them out for the repair kit and the first aid kit to save some money. You could go with the protein bar instead of the energy drink to save more money, or the fire extinguishers to be as cheap as you need. I've never been set on fire yet in this tank, so I never take the fire extinguishers because I'm mainly PvE, but your results may vary. Since it is kind of a sluggish tank, you might even take the engine oil to increase the maximum speed of your tank, but this thing really needs more of the acceleration than maximum speed, in my opinion, so these are kind of useless. I take the field rebuild kit. This is extremely useful. If you die, you can respawn with 60% of your health and all of your ammunition, or if you're alive, you will get a full heal plus all of your ammunition back. You pay the price at almost double what the high tier field maintenance kit costs, but you also get a full heal and all of your ammo versus only getting 20% of your health back and all of your ammo, and it does not let you resurrect after you die. So pick your poison on that, but if you're going to PvE, please take one or the other. It's really, really helpful, believe me. Retrofits. This tank gets a universal slot, an armor slot, and a firepower slot, so you only get 3. For me, I went with gyroscopic stabilizers because the rate of fire is a big help to get that reload time down, and the aim time, again, this is kind of a sluggish aim time. You need to get the aim time down on this tank so that you're not spending more time aiming than shooting. Since it's got an armor slot, I saw no point in taking anything other than just pure hull hit points. This is a main battle tank, but it's a support, but if you get into trouble, you want to have the health to at least weather the storm long enough for you to get the hell out of dodge, and so that is exactly what I did. And for the firepower slot, I saw no reason not to just go ahead and give it as much damage as it can. It is a premium tank, but the stock ammunition doesn't hit that hard. So I went with a 7.5% increase in my damage, just so that I can make this thing at least a little bit punchy when I do get to fire. And that is, in a nutshell, the M60-2000. Tier 7 main battle tank. It is an American tank. It needs to be hulled down to be extremely effective, but if you do find perfect hull down positions, you can tear things up, and you really don't have much to fear from anything other than tier 9s when you're hull down, because this turret is more than tough enough to weather pretty much any storm. It has some decent mobility, it has decent reload times, it has very good gun depression and gun handling, so overall I think it's a pretty good tank. It's not a frontline fighter, but I think overall pretty damn good tank for the money. Again, just to reiterate, it is a collector edition tank. It comes with the Challenger 1 Falcon, which is a tier 8 main battle tank, and it comes with some credits. It comes with some premium time. It's the only way to get these two tanks, so you'll have to think it over. I think it's worth it. I do think that $100 is a lot better than spending $147, even if you could buy these tanks separate. If you could buy them separate, I would only buy the Challenger 1 Falcon. So overall, it's up to you. If you're a tank collector, obviously you're going to go with it. If you enjoy the Abrams line, this is sort of like the in-between between the original Abrams and the M1A1 Abrams. So this is kind of just like a stepping stone in between. It is a pretty damn good main battle tank for tier 7. It holds up very well, hull down, and it does just damn good. It doesn't do anything in particularly right or wrong, and I think it's fairly strong. I wanted to mention that they did announce that the AMX and the XM1 FSED tanks will be made available for purchase separately, and so finally you guys will be able to get in on those tanks without having to buy a package deal at all. So if you held out because the package deal was a little bit too rich for your blood, eventually they are going to, at a later date, put them on the website as individual purchases. That may end up happening to this collector edition, but considering the last collector edition, it really didn't happen, so you might have to consider that. But anyway, just to show you that this tank is no joke, I do have a Pve replay for you, so stick around. I'll see you on the battlefield. And here we're back on everyone's favorite map, Cerebus. I don't know why this map came up so many times in the rotation when I try to record replays. I seem to get this map all the time. But that's okay, because there are a few places where you can go hold down in this and be quite effective. And obviously the Lav 600 there had not seen this tank yet as he kind of scopes it out. He's probably wondering what in the hell this Frankenstein's monster is. But that's okay. As you can see, the speed isn't too bad even on the off-road terrain, and as you know, I take that crew training to increase my off-road terrain speed by 10%, and this is one of those areas where that's definitely going to be useful. Somehow artillery gets spotted because he fires and he's kind of sitting up there on the big hill, and we go ahead and take him out, luckily, because artillery can just basically tear you apart slowly but surely, and they're just a pain in the butt, so glad he got taken out early. Now, I noticed that the Challenger 1 on my team is moving to the other side of the train, so I decided I'll stay on this side of the train, and hopefully I'll be able to work this ridgeline coming up and basically just stay along this train and kind of poke over the cars here and shoot to the other side. I've seen that our Lav is taking off up there on the hill, and I'm not sure why he eventually comes back down off the hill. Maybe he got scared that he wasn't going to get any kind of real support from us, and he does come back this way instead of staying up there the entire time, which would, I think, be a pretty good spot for a tank destroyer. That's where I would go in my tank destroyers, where I went in the Assaulter during my review. Here we are, just plugging away at the C1 boss tank here. And I am sort of semi-hull down right now. The only thing he's really going to have a true shot at is going to be my upper plate. But as you see, even with 320 millimeters of armor, the upper plate still did not hold up against the C1's fire. Now, if I would have been able to go completely hull down, I probably would have been just A-okay. But unfortunately, those rocks did not come up far enough to block much more than just my lower front plate. Not sure what happened where that shot went. It just kind of went, and it looked like it should have hit, but it decided not to. No one else wanted to waste their massive shots on that guy, so I went ahead and did so and finished off the BMD. No sense having him wandering around just being a pain in our sides. Now, I know that most of the tanks for the bots are going to spawn over here. That was my plan, was to clean up the right side and then come over here and do exactly this. Go hold down on this car along the train tracks here and just lay in, hopefully to the sides and rears of tanks, as my Challenger 1 sort of just takes the brunt of the shots. They're very, very focused on my team over there, which lets me do exactly what you're seeing. And this is kind of how you're going to have to play this tank. Being out front and first means you'll be the first to die. This tank cannot withstand much from the front if you are not hull down. Now, obviously, these tanks really wouldn't have been too much of a threat to me. The Terminators and autocannons in general, the frontal hull armor is decent enough to take and weather a storm from autocannons. So as far as that goes, I could have been over there, but just to reiterate what I was saying during the review, that you want to be hull down. Even against autocannons, there's no reason not to be hull down. I mean, it gives you the most protection against things that you can't even see. And so, if you're going to play this tank, that's kind of the style that you have to get used to. So I try to go hull down in as many situations as I can when playing this tank, just to make sure that I just don't think about it and I just kind of do it automatically. Now here I'm going to run into a little bit of trouble. I've got a looks like an MK. What is that? Looks like a Stingray, actually. So I don't want to. Oh, it's an M8. Oh, so it's a Thunderbolt. So again, the Stingray class of tanks in general has a lot of penetration, and if I don't go hull down against most of those lines, I'm going to get penetrated. But I got this Weasel to deal with, and while he's not necessarily a threat, as long as I can keep my front to him, my sides, especially on the hull, and of course the rear, should he get around me, are not strong enough to weather his storm of bullets, even though he is a fairly weak autocannon tank. But the M8 has definitely got more than enough punch to go right through me, so I said hell with that. I'll kind of get rid of the Weasel, use the rocks to block my hull from the M8 so he could not get very good shots, and then I took out the Weasel, and then artillery on my team helped finish off the M8. Now here's where I could have gone a different path than I do. I decided I wanted to get up here and sort of do the flank maneuver with this, because no one else seemed to want to come over here. Even the LAV 600, who I thought should have been up here the entire game and just wailing on these tanks, did not come up here for very long. He went away, so I decided I needed to come up here. There's dips in the ground here where I can go hull down, and that was mainly what I was planning on doing, was to go hull down, use my gun depression, and shoot over the ridgeline. But all of the enemy tanks right now are focusing pretty much entirely on our Challenger 1, and that's fine with me. I can sit up here and shoot him in the butt the whole day long. I had a pretty good shot lined up, but as you've seen, I'm teetering there on a little bit of the terrain, and the gun recoil actually just made the shot go completely not where I wanted it to go. So, but my team is flanking the bots and tearing them up pretty good. I can go ahead and decide to move up here and try to do the same thing. Just shoot over these ridge lines, get my lower plate protected, and basically just spot this little corner over here where most of the bots start spawning. I was hoping that I could assist the LAV, which has now moved up on the ridgeline across from me, to get them in a crossfire, and I was hoping to piss these bots off by shooting them in the rear to make them turn and make them very vulnerable to fire from the LAV and the Challenger. Doesn't quite help. It helps a little bit, but the bots are kind of dug in, except for these two right below me who know I'm here but don't have the gun elevation to shoot me. But I did take a shot from the Leopard down below. The boss hit me because even though my lower plate is more or less hidden, the upper plate he can shoot up into underneath my turret. There's a nice little turret ring there, and I think that's pretty much where he hit. He may have actually hit my lower plate. I may not have been as hidden as I thought I was. This is kind of a dumb thing. I was not planning to go all the way around here. I thought both of the enemy tanks had backed around that corner, and I was just going to move up to support, but they decided to come right back out because our Challenger came up over the tracks on that side and pissed them off. So I decided, okay, I'll make do with this rock. Now I am basically hull down. He cannot shoot anything except for the frontal left half of my turret. And he's not doing a very good job of it. The bot's, you know, he's trying to aim where he thinks the center of mass on my tank is going to be, but there's ground and a rock there, so he's not accomplishing much. And just like that, we're done with that match, and I didn't do all that great. I did come in first only because I could get into a flanking spot and just tear up these enemy tanks. So not the best game, but you got to understand, like I said, this tank is not meant to be up front and be taking all the hits and taking the brunt. You have to get to the sides and flanks. The low penetration or average penetration isn't enough to go through most other main battle tanks you're going to go up against, especially from the front. You have to be able to be a support tank. Now, like I said, now support obviously changes depending on your position. Had I been the main push on that, if we didn't have that Challenger 1 and I had been pulling up against that railroad car at the start, and I would have been shooting and killing all of those enemy tanks. If they had been focused on me, I probably would have been just as fine as the Challenger 1 was, because I was hull down and they couldn't hit anything except for my turret, which is perfectly fine. That's what you want. But if you can't get into spots where you can really use your gun depression in that turret, as you plainly saw, I took a couple of hits, and that was getting hit right in the front of my hull. So even the 320 millimeters is not going to be enough, because it is just simply 320 millimeters. It's not composite armor. It does not have good hull modifiers. So what you see is what you're going to get. So you have to make sure, as always, like I've already said, go hull down. Get hull down. This tank is wonderful. I like it. It's not as big. It is more maneuverable, I think, than all of the other Abrams you saw right there in that replay. It does get up, and it does move fairly good for a main battle tank. Do I think it's worth it as part of the package? Yes, I do. I think it is a little bit different. It's, like I said, it's a Frankenstein monster tank. It's not just another recolored or reskinned version of an Abrams or what have you. So overall, I think this tank does work, and it comes packaged with a tier 8 premium main battle tank, which I will do a review on soon, and couple that with the 90 days of premium and 15, I think, million credits, and it's not a bad deal. And that's pretty much going to do it for the video. If you did enjoy it, if I helped you out, please press that like button down below. It really does help out the channel. And if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my channel, you can click down at the bottom of your screen right now, and you'll get all the updates every time I upload a new video, whether it's on Armored Warfare or some other games coming down the pipeline I think you might enjoy. Take care out there, and I'll talk to you all next time.